Well, so I just want to kind of share the story of how you got into what you're doing today, which you're a pioneer in what you do. I think you're the only person who's on air injury analyst still. So,
Still.
uh,
Yeah.
but why don't we just kind of start from your upbringing a
Yeah.
little bit? You were raised by, I think you said, three women. I'd love to just hear that story and then kind of how they impacted you, some lessons that you learned
Sure.
growing up. Yeah,
Well, it's a wonderful, made in the USA kind of story. I'm a product of a single mother of three, and two older sisters and a grandmother, and those four women, they kicked my ass every single day and made me the man that I am today. And it's a wonderful upbringing, and I've had some incredible role models and and father figures during that time, which filled in a lot of blanks. And it wasn't the conventional type of upbringing, but it was tremendous. So I'm a I guess what they call first generation American from Colombian born parents, and here we are. And played baseball, played every sport, but pretty much played baseball through high school, and I was pretty good. And then I went to college and had a failed attempt at fall baseball as a walk on. And as you know, Joe, a Division I curveball is no joke. And I got
know that very well. Yeah.
I got sent packing, man. I got sent packing, and I was okay. Thank God. I liked the books. I liked science and math, and I was also in the training room for that short little stint. I was in the training room for a little bit, and one day after I decided not to play baseball anymore, I walked into the office of the head athletic trainer, Ron Linfont, who ultimately became my most important mentor. And he ran sports medicine at St. John's. My God, 20, oh my, almost 35 years he ran it. And I said, one day I think I want to do what you do. And he just laughed at me because I was some cocky SOB. He goes, yeah, you want to do what I do? So come back tomorrow. I'll put you to work. I cleaned training tables and emptied out garbage cans and stock tape for the next 3 months. It was miserable. And then after 3 months, might have even been longer, I went up to him and said, is there anything else that I could do? And he looked at me, oh, is cleaning the tables not good enough for you? Is stocking treatment tables and the tape not good enough? I'm like, no. Absolutely. I'm happy to do that, but I think I got pretty good at it. Is there anything else I can do? So he gives me a roll of athletic tape. He goes, learn to tear it. And you probably know this. Tearing white athletic tape, not easy without getting the string, all the threads connected to it. And I took boxes home just trying to learn to snap that. And then that led to me starting to learn the science of athletic training and spent 4 years as a student athletic trainer at St. John's and under his tutelage. And as a junior at St. John's, I was the student athletic trainer for the men's basketball team with Louis Carnesecca as the head coach, Ron Linfont as the head athletic trainer. So I basically went wherever they went as a student. And one day when we practiced at Madison Square Garden, Knicks were either coming off or going on, and we were coming on or going off. And he introduced me to the head athletic trainer, my second mentor, Mike Saunders, who was with the Knicks for 28 years. And Ron said, Mike, this is my student trainer, Marty Jaramillo. Can you put him to work next year as an intern? He goes, no problem. We got him. It was simple as that. Became an intern for the New York Knicks and spent 3 seasons with them. One as an intern, and they hired me as a part-time assistant athletic trainer with the Knicks. And I had 3 coaches, Pitino, John McLeod, Stu Jackson. And then I actually left. I know it sounds crazy, but I left the Knicks. I was already a certified athletic trainer, and I left to go to grad school to get my doctorate as a physical therapist. I just knew that as the third man down with the Knicks, I was never going to be able to move up the ranks. And
Yeah.
I want to diversify my career by also becoming a physical therapist. So having the athletic training background, a physical therapy background, and then I also became a strength and conditioning coach. It really gave me just a kind of widespread and well-rounded knowledge to help the athletes I was going to work with in the future.
That's awesome. Wow. Well, thanks for some of the background, Marty. It's great. So, what about like growing up? But what were some of those interests maybe? I mean, obviously you played baseball, you went to St. John's and wanted to walk on, but were you like when did you kind of start becoming curious about some of these things? Because physical therapy is, you're helping people. It's hands on. It's kind of a specific thing that you want to get into. So,
Yeah.
it's yeah.
So that's a great question, Joe. I think back to that on that a lot, especially where my career has been evolving. And I remember watching like the 80 Lake Placid Olympics and some of the Summer Olympics as well. And I, for some reason, as a kid, as a child, observing gold, silver, bronze, and how close those battles were. And I was just fascinated with the concept of, man, what happens on that day to all the planets to align to get that gold and that silver. And sometimes the margin of error was just, in the hundreds or thousands of seconds, right? Or ounces in weight or whatever it is, right? Or inches. And I realized, you know, that it was always science, all of it. The difference between gold, silver, and bronze on any given day is strictly science because the training is excellent. Everyone's done everything they possibly can. And the difference is science. And the concept of human performance was really that first seed for me. The watching the human body just do incredible things. It was cool, and it's never lost that love of what the human body and someone's physique can do. It's really just I've never lost that. And in my training between being a physical therapist, an athletic trainer, and a strength and conditioning coach, all three bodies of science that just kind of really has meshed well for me, and it's been tremendous. Funny, recently I interviewed on my podcast, Game Recognizes Game,
Mhm.
um, a 1972 silver medalist. His name was Fritz Hobbs, a rower. And the reason why that story I love is because I told you I've been fascinated with the Olympics, right? Even my Connecticut license plate has the USA Olympic rings as a proud contributor to the Team USA. So it's always been a thing. So when I met Fritz, older man now, in his office, he had the silver medal hanging on a hook, like, and there was a tie behind the medal, like a necktie. And I'm like, why is your Olympic medal on a hook? I mean, and is that a silver medal? He says, yeah. He says, yeah, I leave it there because it reminds me every day how much I hate to fucking lose. And that was just everything, right? He was like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
because at that one day, you didn't have it. Meanwhile, he had the Olympic records, I'm sorry, the American records, won the U.S. time trials, and then he got the silver and it stuck with him. And it's crazy. So yeah, so you see how it all blends together. And when I finished graduate school, I started in private practice, and still a consultant for the Knicks and consultant for the Mets, and just working with a lot of professional athletes, particularly in off seasons when they come through New York. So I've had just a very, very blessed career. Got a chance to work on the '96 Olympics in Atlanta, assigned to men's volleyball and beach volleyball, which was, man, that was the first time they had beach volleyball in Atlanta. Obviously, it's landlocked. They had to create this
Yeah.
stadium. So it's been a very absolutely blessed career without question. But Olympics were that seed.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it is such a so that's one of the things I want to ask you about here is that you have it's a very unique career. Like you've pursued what you genuinely are interested in and have wanted to go after. And then at one point, I don't know if just to hear this story, how you ended up linking up with the ESPN crew and getting on TV because you have all this expertise as a physical therapist, strength trainer, working with the human performance aspect. And then it all ties in at some point to being on TV and being an on-air injury analyst. So I'd love for you to share that, just how that came to be at one point.
Joey, do you know how many times I get DMs from people and on LinkedIn or on Instagram? How can I apply for that job?
Good
And
luck because there's not a
I'm
posting.
like, yeah, I didn't apply for the job. And
Yeah.
it's strictly, I every single day of my life, now I'm doing this over 3 decades. I've been so blessed, and I pinch myself every day with the blessings I've had, and I know that I've been very lucky, but I also took advantage of some of those chances. So Chris Fowler, the legendary voice of ESPN, who's been on there now for over 40 years,
Hmm.
he was referred to me because he is a monster in the gym. Man, that guy, it's something to see. So impressive on so many levels. And, you work out, you work hard, and you're going to find yourself on my table at some point. So he got referred to me, and we had a lot of different things, some post-surgery stuff. And like clockwork, he'd always show up on Wednesday before he had to travel on Thursday for the game of the week on Saturday, wherever that was. And also, like clockwork, he would bring in his injury list for Saturday's game. And he asked me, what are my talking points for Saturday? Michigan has this, Ohio State has this. What do you think? And in college football, what's interesting is the amount of information you get on sports injuries is like throwing tea leaves. These coaches are just ridiculous with how they report college injuries compared to the NFL. I mean, I've actually asked coaches, coach, you say lower leg injury, is it a knee, is it an ankle? They're like, yeah, it's below the waist. Really? That's their answer,
Give me a
right?
lot. Yeah.
And
Thanks for giving me a lot there.
so I remember, like, just saying, well, okay, um, here's definitely a knee injury based on that replay from last week, but he continued into the fourth quarter. Moving was pretty good and pushed off pretty well. Didn't look like he lost any acceleration, but the real telltale sign is Monday, Tuesday, as all the swelling sets in. So that's the kind of stuff we started talking about. And Thursday is the real kicker when Chris was going to see them basically on Thursday or Friday. He'd always observe practice. So I always kind of tell him what to look for at practice because we were just throwing darts on who's going to play, who's not going to play, right? And he kind of liked that banter that him and I had. And I wasn't prepared for anything. I thought he basically gave me an assignment every Wednesday. What are my talking points? Right. And then a couple of years of that, he goes, you need to be on air. You need to be in my booth. This is like exactly what I want, what no question the audience wants. And he put me in touch with his powers that be, another mentor of mine in media. His name is Ed Placey, legendary executive producer at ESPN, recently retired from ESPN, now on to other great chapters. And Ed Placey was my sponsor at ESPN. And he said, I want you to be the Mike Pereira of sports injury analysts. And I think we can do this. And he said that because Mike Pereira himself went to ESPN and suggested the idea of the rules analyst, and ESPN passed.
Wow. Wow.
And then Fox said, "Hey, good idea. Let's go with that." And then, but he changed the game when now there's rules analysts in every sport and particularly in every college and NFL game as well as now NBA as well, right? So and took a couple of years to convince all the powers that be. So between Chris Fowler as my sponsor, Ed Placey is my sponsor, I debuted on the Saturday night game of the week with Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit, and then that day changed my life. It changed my life. What's cool about that, it was so many years later, over 3 decades later, making my national debut. It's like I worked my way up. I wasn't applying for anything. Right?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, you're going on ABC, millions of people watching. Good luck with that. And it's been just a wonderful, wonderful ride. And that particular season, I covered every major game, including the Rose Bowl, and the national championship that year. And we've had some extended long timeouts during that season where that's what they had me on for.
Hmm.
Then the pandemic happened, and then some things like that, and CBS came a calling, and an incredible opportunity I had at CBS, and they use me like I always like. Actually, CBS uses me the way ESPN and Ed Placey in particular always said, and Chris Fowler said, you need to be just work your way through all the morning talk shows, do the summary of the weekend, and we need you. And unfortunately, ESPN, like many large organizations, everything is so siloed, and
Mhm.
the lack of communication really kind of fell short in terms of my role. But CBS is the opposite, because all the producers talk, all the coordinating producers talk,
Yeah.
and I find myself on multiple different platforms, multiple different shows. So all the ideas that Ed and Chris had, CBS has run with it. It's been a wonderful experience. I still go back to ESPN, but that's who knows.
Okay. I hear you. All right. So you just said several things that are so interesting because I work for a guy that I work for says that all the time. That's something he emphasizes. Basically, like, hey, you're kind of always on a job interview. If you think about it, and not in the way that you should be going, doing certain things to get promoted or that type of thing. But he's like somebody's always kind of watching what you're doing, and that's what he got pulled into our company by another guy who was like, hey, I love what you're doing. Come over here. So it's just interesting that yeah, you were just going about your business with your enthusiasm. That's something I kind of want to ask you about too. Like that just seems part of your personalities. They're super enthusiastic and kind of curious, right? So you were just being yourself, and Chris is like, hey man, I need you to come over here with me. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting how that
It's
how
in,
that kind of works out. But
yeah, it's
um,
interesting how you point that out. Because I every now and then I've been asked to reflect, and what Chris said to me is that you explain very complicated things, science, medical, and you make them easy to digest. And that is something that just happened over time, because every single day working with a new patient, we have to have goals. And the more educated a patient is in their own care, um, always believed that empowered them. And by being an active participant in your own care, and able to explain the very detailed and scientifically proven, surgical methods or injury issues, that's where that kind of rapport and enthusiasm, my ability or my intention to inspire the patient that, what, might look dark now, but we are going to get there stronger and fitter and better than ever, by just explaining things that a way that they could understand. And I think that's helped me well, not only um, as a sports injury analyst on sports television, but also now in my podcast when I interview folks. um, I'm listening a lot, and my ability to listen has really helped me a great deal.
oh man, well that's what you've been doing. You've been doing that your whole career, yeah, listening to people and kind of helping them. So that's that's awesome. So how do you do that then? Like how do you break down a super because that's it's important whether it's you're a coach, whether you're maybe in sales or what you do.
Yeah.
How do you break down a super complicated concept into something easy? Like how do you think about that?
It's a great question. So in my world, and on Twitter X and online on YouTube, there are countless sports injury analysts, right? Everyone's an internet doc, right? And my God, those same of the guys are the ones DMing me. And I don't say this to them, but I'll say it to you: is stop talking like you want to hear yourself speak. Everyone loves to talk these big words and look how much I know. Patients don't give a shit how much you know. Okay. They're in front of you because of what you know, right? They
Yeah.
just want you to help them. And in orthopedics, oftentimes the surgery is not unlike carpentry. We got to attach two ends. We got to have those two ends mend, heal, and then we can go. And the reason why you can't get off of crutches yet, because, it's mending. The reason why you can't walk yet, because it's mending. Give me 6, give me 4, give me 6, give me 8 weeks, and then we're going to start walking. Then we're going to start jogging. Then we're going to start jumping. Then we're going to start cutting, right? Give them that. And why can't I, if it's so secure, why can't I push it? Well, there's not enough blood supply where those anchors or screws went in. Things like that, right? Just the simplicity of that. They don't need to know that, the point of isometricity in an ACL reconstruction. They don't need to know what a cadaver graft is versus hamstring graft versus patella tendon graft. They don't need to know all that at the beginning. We might eventually, but so often doctors, physical therapists, they just like to hear themselves speak and show off how much they know. No one gives a shit. All right. And why is that? Because it's not for you to tell yourself that you're great. No, the best you could ever be, no matter how great a surgeon you are, physical therapy, you can only be good. The only person allowed to call you great is your patient based on what you have done for them. If you call yourself great and every internet doctor thinks they're the best, okay, right? And with 50,000 followers or 100,000 followers, because of all this stuff that no one makes it easy to understand because they already think they're great. And the most you can ever call yourself is good.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. Social media, man, it's the powers that can be, but there's also a lot of noise. Yeah. That people just want to kind of hear themselves jabber. They think they're an expert at it. So,
Yeah. I'm the only one actually on a network.
yeah, exactly. You're the only one.
I'm the only one.
The guy doing it with an actual job.
With an actual job.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I
So,
didn't apply for.
yeah, exactly.
Because I kept it simple. How ironic.
There you go. There you go. So, Marty, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is you said it a few times too, is preparation. That's like something that you've touched on. And so you probably do the same thing. You're going to prepare for a podcast episode. You try and look up maybe something else that person's been on. Although you're having on Chris Fowler, Justin Tuck. But so I Googled you or YouTubed you, and you were on this podcast with that kid was 14. I think that was interviewing you.
He was 12 when he did that.
He was 12.
Yep.
He is unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
I've never seen. I mean, I don't know, like just so impressive. But he was so prepared, and some of the questions he was asking were so detailed.
Man, I was so impressed with that young man. We got to start. Hold on there. Put a pause on this. Let's give him a shout out.
Yeah, give him a shout out, man.
I
gotta reach out to him and say, hey,
get him on. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Was it Chase? I think his name was
Chase.
Chase. Yeah. So, but anyway, so he was so prepared, and that kid is so smart. But for you preparing, the preparation process for the unknown, pretty much, right? Because you're not going on air. You can't anticipate who's going to get hurt in the game. So how are you preparing for that? And then being so that you're ready for, all right, something happens. I need to be able to speak on this on a dime.
Yeah.
What's that preparation process look like?
Yeah. So not having the instruction manual, how to be a sports injury analyst, right? One of the best advice I've ever received was from Ed Placey. He goes, when you're about to go on air, he goes, think about landing the plane first and then take off. There's an interesting concept there, right? Hit them with a strong fact, a strong, incoming line, and then go into explaining what you have to say, So, I might see a knee buckle inwards, and I might immediately say, based on that replay, I'm unhappy with the angle how that knee buckled, and here's why. Bop, 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 bop. So in terms of preparation, so for live sports, I have a lot of data based on the percentages of this type of injury versus that type of injury. For example, despite the brutality and physical nature of football, 70% of all ACLs are still non-contact, right? You wouldn't think, right? You wouldn't think, but still 70% are non-contact. And Achilles tears, over 90% are non-contact, right?
Yeah.
Despite the physicality and brutality of the sports, right?
Mhm.
Two major injuries that are essentially non-contact, right? So those are very interesting facts. Those are very interesting facts. So um, in terms of preparation, most of the starters, I do the starting lineup and look at injury histories of all those starting lineups. So how Fowler and Herbstreit have all the players, all the information have on everyone in front of them. I have something similar, but much more diluted. Starting players, offense, defense, both sides of the field, both teams, and I have a basic injury history on all of them. So in the event someone's coming off with an ankle and knee injury, I immediately get to reference cross-rep if they've ever injured that exact um, uh, ankle at the same, previously. Or I also have a laptop, in commercial break, I'm trying to figure out if there's any history there, right? And then I can go from there when I go on air. So lots of different things in terms of preparation. If there's an existing injury or they're coming back or returning from something, I can also do a lot of research. And in college football, where I got my best information? This is really funny to me because I discovered it. Campus newspapers, because the reporters in the campus go to class with these athletes. So I mean, I would remember seeing in, University of Miami, Ohio State, and they would say so-and-so was in class with a right ankle brace on crutches. That was anywhere in the media,
No way.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, Chris, it's a right ankle. How do you know? Yeah, I know.
Jeez. So you're
It,
digging deep for some
Oh,
of
you
that
have to.
research.
For
Yeah.
college football, you have to.
Yeah.
And then when I talk about the summer, when I go on Monday, like on CBS, and talk about the summary of the weekend or leading into Monday Night Football, I have my high-profile injuries of the week and across many teams, and I spend an enormous amount of time researching the history, how it happened, what's in store for them, what the outlook is, both short-term, long-term, and beyond. And I might be on sometimes on live television 10 to 15 minutes, which is an enormity, right? It's a lifetime to be on live television. I might spend 4, 5, 6 hours prepping starting on Sunday for that 10 to 15 minutes, like you do for your podcast, because it's live. You can't just say it, cut, and it's live television,
Uh-huh.
and right now I'm staring at a camera. There's no one behind the camera. I'm just staring at a camera. I'm kind of used to this friend of mine now, this red light on, Um, yeah. So
Yeah.
my whole studio here was set up first by ESPN and then updated with CBS. And this goes on. My Wi-Fi is not even Wi-Fi. It's hardwired. Remember that Ethernet cable? It's hardwired. So there's never any Wi-Fi
So
issues. And
there's no pixelation, anything
yeah,
like that. Yeah.
I got lighting on. It's bananas. But it's interesting when you're not in the studio with people around you. It's another thing.
Uh-huh.
It's you had to get over. And my kids asked me, I got two amazing young men. My 13-year-old Jack Jaramillo and then his brother Austin, who's 11, both big time athletes in both baseball and basketball. And they asked me, Dad, aren't you nervous when you go on? I'm like, of course I am. I'm fucking terrified, right? I'm terrified to fuck up. And how do you minimize that fear? Just be prepared. And I thank God every day for two men in particular, Ron Linfant, head athletic trainer, head of sports medicine at St. John's, and head of sports medicine with the Knicks, Mike Saunders. These guys prepared for war every single day. The amount of equipment they had just in case, you know, this happens, this type of fracture. We need a wheelchair. We have the ambulance. We have the EpiPen. We have IV bags. We have, stretchers, casts, like it was a mass unit, the just in case. And that, without question, is now in my DNA. Everything I do is overkill, just in case, just to be prepared. So there's never any doubt that you were prepared in that moment. And oftentimes in sports medicine, it could be an emergency. On television, it's just information. Be prepared with your information. And oftentimes, I might learn something by listening to the announcer, listening to my anchor talking to me. They may have heard something on a breaking news or another wire. They'll say, "Hey, MJ, I just heard that they're actually gonna like when with Victor Wembanyama when he had or the aneurysm.
Yeah.
Um, his issue was moving very, very fast, and then they went from him he's being examined for an aneurysm to within a couple of hours he was out for the season. You
Mhm.
know,
Wow.
so it was that's and I learned that on air. Because I said, they said, can you go on? Can you talk about the aneurysm? Like, of course. And then during that live moment, that by the way, they just announced that he's gonna be out for the year. So
Wow. Wow. It's were you on I was kind of thinking about this while you were just walking me through that, but were you on air for the Damar Hamlin situation?
oh, good question, man. I was not. I'll tell you exactly what happened. That was the night of the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That was
Yeah.
the night of the Rose Bowl. And um I just got off. I was on air for almost 4 hours during that Rose Bowl. The college footballs last a long time, right? And I remember it was Monday night, and I had a shirt and tie. I loosened up the tie, unbuttoned the shirt. I go upstairs to hang out with my boys. It's Monday night, just before they go to bed. You know what they say? Dad, let's watch Monday Night Football. I'm
Oh boy.
I've just been on air for
You
four
just
hours.
go.
Let's watch it. I'm like, of
Yeah.
course.
Like okay for the
I,
boys.
I pour myself a little brown juice on rocks, and I'm just watching this happen in live, and I mumbled, not realizing I'm mumbling, and I said, "Oh shit!" And they're like, "Dad, what's wrong?" I'm like, "Boys, this is a medical emergency on the field, and this is going to get really bad, really, really quickly, and uh, I'm sorry you have to watch this because it's going to be scary for a lot of people." And because I know exactly what was happening, and I saw it on the face of the athletic trainer from the Buffalo Bills, he immediately, leaned in and immediately knew he was unconscious and immediately mobilized the resources. People on TV don't realize that the medical staffs of Division One as well as NFL, actually all college football and NFL teams rehearse scenarios like that the day before, right? Because the visiting team needs to know where the ambulance is, where emergency personnel is, right? So they rehearse this the day before. These are rehearsed situations, real life simulations. And he immediately leaned in, radioed, and everything was moving. And so my phone blew up. Fowler, Placey, my agent, everything. Let's get you ready to go. Let's go. ESPN never called, right? Right? Why? Absolutely terrified to speculate, right? And it's a very old school type of mindset, right? And that's where they're getting it now. But the reason why someone like me can speculate is as I'm running on the field, and that's the kind of first person approach I give, as I'm running on the field, if I'm not speculating of what the potential of this injury or situation is, then I'm not doing my job, right? So, any network's fear is speculation about what it could be, what kind of diagnosis is. No, no. It's based on what we see on replay. This are the 2 or 3 things that this athlete might be dealing with and what the medical staff might be dealing with, right? So that is it's educated, it is professional speculism, right? Which is what we have to do. As I'm running on the field, if I didn't have the right angle, there's 4 or 5 different scenarios that I'm in my head thinking things through as I'm running out to the athlete, right? So that ESPN never called, and the amount of dead air, and they were harshly criticized for having a lot of dead air
Yeah.
during, and it was a very difficult moment. You can't prepare for that moment, so there's really no, commentary or criticism of, I think it was Buck and Aikman on that call.
Mhm.
It was a sad moment indeed, and hopefully never happens again on national television. But in the event of those situations, there are things that can be put the audience and everyone watching at ease,
Yes, for sure.
And
Yeah.
so to give you a little quick background on what exactly happened there. So what Damar Hamlin suffered is something called commotio cordis. Okay. So what is that? First of all, we've never, ever seen it in an NFL player. What happens is it's basically a direct blunt trauma impact to the chest in between heartbeats. Think about that. Boom, 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 right? That pulse, boom, boom. In between that boom, impact, boom. That's thousands and thousands of a second to be, right?
Yeah.
Now, Damar Hamlin, heart rate at that moment, right? Being a defensive end, D-back, right?
Yeah.
140, 150 beats per minute, right?
Right.
Running full speed, right? And the impact basically short-circuited the heart and it stopped. The only the only information we know about that type of trauma comes from, ready for this? Third base coaches that get hit with a baseball right in the chest. Okay? Hockey puck, chest, right? Third baseman, chest. Kids, the average age on the commotio cordis, there's a registry. Actually, at the University of Wisconsin, they have a registry for this event. The average age is 14 years old, right? It's just a freak accident. Kids, third base coaches. And now Damar Hamlin. Doesn't happen in football. Not only because they're more developed, but also the equipment. It was just the perfect scenario where that little space in the shoulder pads, a little space, just got him. Boom.
Yep.
Crazy.
It just so happened to be a nationally televised game and the whole nation's wide. Yeah, it's so crazy. But wow, the way that you just broke that down, Marty, is awesome. So that explains exactly what you do, man. Like the value that you bring to these broadcasts. I would love
Yeah,
to see.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm proud of the work, man. To be called the Mike Pereira of sports injury analyst,
yeah,
man, that's just an honor, and
that's awesome.
I don't take that lightly. Words like trailblazer, I don't take that lightly. I know I'm carving a path, and I hope there'll be dozens and dozens of folks in years to come that do what I do. That's the community I want to develop. But it's something I take very, very, very seriously and very, very proud of. Very, very
Definitely.
proud of to be able to take that kind of information and break it down. And Ed Placey, Chris Fowler, and so many of these guys, like, they couldn't believe that ESPN didn't put me on air. That's okay. Everyone does the best they could in that moment. And at the end of the day, Damar Hamlin just is living a long life from here to come. He had incredible help and medical response team from the head athletic trainer, all the assistants, the team docs, obviously the on-site EMS personnel, first responders. It was just a tremendous orchestration of events that saved the young man's life. And, what's interesting about how crazy that is, I'll give you another even more rare incident. So, you remember when Bronny James, right? He had sudden cardiac event. He
Oh yeah,
also
yeah.
had a cardiac arrest. He
Okay.
died on the court and was resuscitated by the medical staff at UCLA, right? A month later, it happened again on the same team. Imagine the odds of that for that medical staff. I mean, the medical staff, they need, some counseling themselves. That's PTSD.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so how that's just an astronomical, like that was just
The odds of
happenstance.
that,
Yeah. Okay.
the odds of that, are just astronomical. I
Uh,
mean, to have two players on one team in one city, it's just astronomical. To have sudden cardiac arrest, um, it's it is an absolute freak of nature. And these kids are cleared to play and to participate with chest X-rays, with medical history, with exams, pre-participation physicals, um, and it happens. You might be too young to remember, but there was an athlete, Hank Gathers,
yeah.
Loyola
Oh yeah.
Marymount, right?
Yeah, I
Loyola
know.
Marymount
Uh,
collapsed on national television, and the head athletic trainer, the entire medical staff was fired um, because, a young man died, and that wasn't their fault. It was a sudden cardiac arrest. And that same head athletic trainer, Loyola Marymount, became the head athletic trainer for the Chicago Bulls. And, he went on to win all those championships with Michael Jordan and company. So, that's a perfect example of your worst day of your life to, what, you did the right thing. And you went on to
Opens up,
greater. Yeah.
opens up doors to an incredible career, man. Wow, Marty, super cool. Hey, so I would love to just ask you about the podcast, man, about Game
Yeah.
Recognizes Game. I think the first episode was Chris Fowler, wasn't it? Or if not
Well,
the
they kind of a
first,
little bit
maybe the
out of
second.
order.
Oh, did that?
They're out of order,
Okay.
but the first one we released was
Oh,
Justin
was
Tuck.
Justin Tuck. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I checked that one out. So
Yeah.
yeah, you've had some awesome guests. Mike Rapole. So speaking of the Johnnies,
Yeah.
he's making it tough to be the Seton Hall Pirate and some other Big East teams right now because what he's
I'll apologize on his behalf.
what he's doing there. But anyway, what's maybe why'd you want to start the podcast and then kind of get going to this next phase of
Yeah.
your career, so to speak?
Yeah, I'm really proud of it, but it's called Game Recognizes Game, an ongoing conversation on greatness. And people ask me all the time, like, why'd you want to do this? Why did you need to do this? And what I did not want a vanity project. I wanted something special that could be built and, nurtured and cultivated over time. But I found it after 3 decades of doing what I do, to stay as enthusiastic and on top of my game and love what I do every single day. I realized I had to become inspired by something. And I realized that pretty much all my inspiration to do what I do has come from my patients. And I've been blessed with having been able to take care of the 1%ers of 1%ers, the icons in sports, business, and entertainment, all three. And I realized with reflection that there was this thread that connected all the greats. It didn't matter what game they were in. They made either change the game or attain the top of their game, right? And did whatever it took to stay there. And there was a work ethic, there was a mindset, and without question, above all else, a relentlessness to get there and then stay there. And they're all of them are so comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And with the amount of time I spend with my patients, because I have a very kind of boutique practice, I only see one patient, 1 hour, no assistant, just me and them. We spend a lot of time together, and the stories upon stories upon stories. When people ask me who your patients are, I can't talk about it, right? Because it's confidential. But if you invite that same guest on a podcast, they can talk about it. They're going to talk about it all, right?
Yeah.
So I've had some great guests, Justin Tuck, who left after greatness in the NFL, right? He decided to enroll in your neighborhood at Wharton Business School, right? Imagine him walking into your classroom, right?
Shaking his hand, you probably did crush your hand, I think. Yeah.
Exactly, right? Imagine him walking into, and then he now finished his MBA, became an intern at Goldman Sachs, and now is a managing director at Goldman Sachs. And you're in the financial services, you get it. I mean, that's not easy to do. He attained greatness twice. And he talks about, and I welcome anyone to watch the podcast, GRG the pod. That's easy to remember, that GRG the pod. He has this great story that he was recruited by accident, one of the NFL all-time greats recruited by accident.
Notre Dame, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Notre Dame.
Yeah.
He went to Central High School, right? In bumfuck Alabama, somewhere, right? Guess what? There were 3 Central High Schools, Central North, Central South, right? The scouts for Notre Dame got lost. They pulled into a gas station in this small town called Kellyton or Kellytown, right? But in Justin Tuck speak, it's Kellyton. And they pulled into a gas station that was run by, I believe it was Justin Tuck's aunt, right? And, oh, yeah, we got you, boys. I'm going to close up here. I'll take you there. We got a big game. It's Friday Night Lights. Just follow me. And they followed her to Central High School. Right? They have their rosters. They have the colors of the jerseys. They have the names of people they're scouting and recruiting. Right? And they're like, the jerseys don't match. They wear blue. and who's that big kid? Hey, he can move. Who's that? And then they just closed it up. They just watched the game, not having any roster information. And they, at the end of the game, walked up to Justin Tuck and said, "How would you like to go to Notre Dame?" Bye. But then, right, Joe?
Yeah.
But then you question, is there anything that's actually an accident, right? You have to question that, right? True. I love this one line that says, "Man, you wanna make God laugh, right? Just make some plans."
Make some plans. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And I'm not a religious guy in any way, but man, little things, those little stories, And then Chris Fowler, who was just a gem on the podcast, and you want to be
awesome. He's incredible.
Thank you. People say that, and you want to talk about being nervous. I interviewed Justin Tuck, like he was, I knew him, and many years ago he was a patient of mine, and it was a conversation. I was prepared but to interview your friend and your mentor, Chris Fowler, so nervous, 100% proud to admit that, beyond nervous, because I was with the GOAT. I'm sitting in front of the GOAT asking him questions because he stayed at the top of his game for 40 years. And he is the part of the soundtrack of our lives, the greatest games that we've ever seen called by him. His voice will be forever in our memories, right? In our banks. And his parents were artists. They were actors. They were theater people. They know nothing about sports. Similar to my background in the sense where my parents didn't know or sisters knew anything about sports. For me, it was ABC Wide World of Sports, the Olympics. In the New York area, we had a guy named Warner Wolf who invented the line called "Let's go to the videotape." That came from Warner Wolf. Every day, 6 p.m. news, ABC on Channel 7 here in New York, right? That's where I got it all, right? And here I am in front of Chris Fowler, and he is now on EA Sports. I hear Chris Fowler's voice in my kids' playroom because they're playing, college football. I'm like, Chris is in my living room now. So it's just so blessed. But then again, let's talk about. I also got these business icons. I got Ken Chenault, who released that last week. Legend, business icon, right? Led American Express through some great times, right? But also through 9/11 and the 2008 financial crisis. And he talked about leadership and how his parents, humble beginnings, who taught him to work hard, be memorable, show up, but above all else, fight for what you believe in, right? And he did, right? And he did. And he didn't want to talk politics. Even his own people said to us, our team, please, under no circumstances, talk about politics. It's not a political show, so that wasn't on the agenda anyway. Out of the box, Joe, he says to me, "Well, Marty, I wouldn't be here in front of you if it wasn't for the landmark case, Brown versus Board of Ed." I'm like, really? We're going there?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go, right? And at the end of the day, he talked about, yes, we are in polarizing times, but despite the challenges of his people and his culture and the challenges of all of us in these polarizing times, he just believed in the promise of the United States. He just believed in all of us, regardless of what aisle. That was the message. It was so inspirational. I'm telling you, my own co-creator of the show, Sonny Jenkins, and she was watching. She was in tears. I thought someone died, right? But she was in tears because it was so moving about the message: humility, grace, just keep believing in this country. And it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. I'm like, wow, if I could, inspire one person like that, man, I knew it was on the right track. And so it's a pretty nice, well-rounded discussion across all industries. The common thread, oftentimes many of them, even if they're not in sports, talk about how sports have impacted their life with the concept of teamwork, hard work, showing up, discipline, things like that. So it's been great. And I'm basically now able to tell the stories of things that have inspired me. Very few times do I ever talk about sports injuries. Simple conversation on the seeds of greatness.
Absolutely, man. It's so cool, and I hope. Well, I don't hope you keep doing it because I'm sure you will because you seem super passionate about it. But you hear all these things about, podcast doesn't make it to episode 10, 20. I mean, it seems like you have a long-term view of this, and you're right. I've listened to the first couple, and even the Mike Rapole, like Chris Fowler, you just get these nuggets from these guys, these legends, like you're saying, and you do such a great job of humanizing it, and you're sitting down with them in
Thank you.
person too, which I wish that, I got to get out there more and do. Wish we were sitting in person, but this is virtual. But you can
We
feel the
will.
connection.
We'll sit down in person one day for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for absolutely. But yeah, nothing. What did you say? Nothing happens on accident. I really love that because I would not have
How could it?
I
How
wouldn't have came
could it?
across whatever what you're doing. I wouldn't have DM'd you. You wouldn't have answered me. And then Sonny wanted to help set it up. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I
it's
and I, and
just
I
really
responded
cool.
right away. And listen,
You did,
look
yeah.
what you're doing. That's not an accident. You had this
Yeah, it's
idea. You
not.
put it out there. It's little things. Mike Rapole, man,
Oh man.
he's become such a mentor. We went we went to college together, didn't know each other. On the
Heard that.
podcast, he's like,
Yeah.
you know why we didn't know each other? Because you actually went to class.
That's class.
I'm
There
like,
you go. Yep.
you know why that sucks for me? Because all of his boys that he went to college with, they're all very wealthy. And I'm still working for
Well, you get to share the story. So it's
Yeah, no, Mike's been a great guy. Now, first, so the odds of winning the beverage game, one time, less than 1%,
yep.
right? So he did that with vitamin water, $4 billion exit. Then he did it with body armor, right? Kobe Bryant, most famous investor, right? Kobe Bryant put in $6 million, and God bless him, man, his estate received over 350 million.
I feel like I've seen that. Yeah, that's
And
insane.
Mike
Yeah.
Rapole, when Vanessa Bryant created the foundation, the Mambasita Foundation, Mike donated $24 million in honor of Kobe's number. Right? I mean, that's just salt of
Yeah.
the earth kind of human beings, right? Um, and then now he went on to invest in many different companies like Pirates Booty, that I'm sure you've seen lots of people eat. Um, and then he buys and acquires Noble, which is we're going to send you some gear, man. They are a sponsor of
Sponsor
my
your show.
podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he also bought at the same time TB12, Tom Brady's company. So now Tom Brady's second largest shareholder of Noble. And they're going to do great things because they're a great company. They're nimble, but they have this vision of it's a lifestyle. It's not so much about the products, which are tremendous, but it's about this lifestyle brand, about how do you move the chains? How do you just get better a little bit every day? You don't have to be a professional athlete, but if you have a little discipline, um, in your life, great things can happen showing up, um, and I heard one line one time that discipline is one of the greatest self-loves you could ever give yourself. One of the greatest, and sometimes just showing up, a ritual, one thing, that's the greatest gift that you can give yourself. And it's interesting with life, when you have this, look at you. You want to do this podcast. You want to do it, right? You show up, you get prepared. You never, I'm sure your fiance never realized how much time it takes. Right?
Yeah, God bless her because she lets me do this, and it's time, man. It's an
Yeah.
hour, and
And I'm
she's
honored to
she's
hear.
downstairs holding the dog while so he doesn't bark, shit
Yeah,
like
man.
that.
Yeah, I got a couple of big dogs myself. I'm hoping they're in the crates right now.
Yeah, man.
But
Yeah.
I'm gonna without question. I love the concept. So I saw a couple of your episodes, and
Thank you. Thank
um,
you.
the concept of the post game. I'm living that post game in some ways. I'm one foot in, one foot out. I
Mhm.
love this media game because it's just it scares the shit out of me, and I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Getting in the box, right, and have that 90-mile-an-hour fastball coming at your head, and or the fear of failure, or sometimes the fear of success. And it's just wonderful to, at this stage in my life, this new chapter, another gift that did happen, maybe by accident, maybe the way the cards were already written, right? But it's a real, this podcast for you, without question, man, is a gift you've given yourself, and congratulations.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, and it's again, it's not an accident. The post game, it's inspired by my own kind of what I've experienced. Like I just had on the episode right before this, JJ Schwarz, who you probably don't know, probably have no idea who JJ Schwarz is. He played baseball at Florida for the
Okay.
Gators. His freshman year, he hit 4 home runs in one game. There's 7 college baseball players that have ever done that in the history of college baseball. And he kind of
I know him
explains this.
now. I
There
know
you
him now.
go. So if you Google whatever, he he kind of talks about how that game, he was always trying to get back to that feeling and get back to that, and could never really find it. So people were talking, he was going to be the first overall pick in the MLB draft, and he just kind of went through it mentally. Like that really was heavy on him. And just, he never made to the big leagues, played a couple years in the minor leagues, but this dude's a legend, and you'll never, you know, 20 years from, well, actually, they'll still be talking about that 4 home run game, but he's not a Bryce Harper, but he's doing it because he's like, hey, this is why I want to do this, because this was my experience. I struggled with the pressure at times, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, that's kind of my experience,
I'm
but
gonna watch that one for sure.
check it out, man. He
And
stud.
it's
Yeah.
my son hit 3 home runs in a game, in a playoff travel game, semifinals game, and we got video of it all. It was a tremendous night. On the way home, I said to him, "This is more than likely will never happen ever, ever, ever again, and that's okay." We turned the page. We just turned the page. It says, "Live. Congratulations, amazing. No one can ever take that away from you. We get back to work tomorrow." And because I worry about things like that, I worry about things like that, and it's, I already feel for JJ Schwarz. I could only imagine, what that went through, that struggle. I hope he's doing well.
Oh, he's doing great now. Yeah, he's becoming a mental performance, a sports psychologist because of that
Oh, love
experience,
that. Love
which is
that.
sweet, which is sweet. So yeah, Marty. Listen, man, this has been about an hour here. It's so cool just to get a chance to talk to you. I think your enthusiasm, the way that you communicate these things that you were so passionate about so effectively, is just inspirational, and something for me to continue to strive for. So just thanks for getting back to me, and thanks again to Sonny for helping set this up, and just excited to put this out there for people to check it out. So
Joe,
thank you,
I
Marty.
was
Yeah.
excited to be on the show. Honored to be on your show. I know how hard this is to do. I like being on the other side of the camera too, and helps me reflect too on a life well lived. And I'm proud of my work, but I'm also proud of. I want to, you know, pay it forward. I always, anyone I can help, they don't have to ever pay me back. It's like, but I do expect you one day to help someone else, right? And if anything I can do to help mentor you, or help you, without question, I'm going to talk about you, because I love this idea, the concept about the challenges post game in life, and not necessarily post athlete world. It could be just new chapter in life,
I think. Yeah.
for an individual who maybe had a career doing one thing, and now what? Is it a next chapter, or is it a plan B? If it's the next chapter, right? Great. But plan B has a negative connotation, right? And I learned that from Justin Tuck. He never called it plan B. There was no plan B, right? It was only the next chapter. And that was so inspiring
That's
to me.
interesting.
There was always inspired. It's not plan B, just in case. No, if you go into anything just in case, no. Right? Right. In terms of just in case you fail, let's have plan B. No, when you succeed, then great. Then we do the next chapter, right? And I think that's an inspiring almost ethos for the post-game podcast. There is no plan B. It's just the next chapter. You know?
You just totally gave me something new to think about there. Yeah, I haven't really thought about that perspective. So
Yeah, plan B is negative, man. No, it's only next chapter, man.
yeah,
Right? In baseball, right? That's what we teach our kids. Turn that page, right? No matter how high you get or how low you get ready for the next pitch, the next inning, whatever it is, next game, right? And
yep.
in life, listen, we're doing this thing called podcast here, and it's we want to. From Chris Fowler on that podcast, I realized that he gets nervous. He's speaking to 10 million people on a live broadcast, and he's responsible for everything going on for hundreds of people in that telecast. He's responsible for the flow, for the pace, for the excitement, and he gets nervous. And it's not about being on camera. No, he gets nervous because he knows he has a fundamental job to just get it right.
Responsibility to the people who are listening.
He has to get it right. It's just, and that is his juice, just to get it right, and that's, I think you do the same thing. I'm doing the same thing, man. We just got to get it right, do our best by our guests, by our audience, and the enthusiasm, you have it too, man. So I thank you, and you're gonna do really, really well. And anything I can to help you, you have me always.
All right, Marty. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. So, and go check out the podcast. Maybe just give a quick shout out to your podcast, the platforms it's on, where people can listen.
Absolutely. Come find us on Game Recognizes Game, a ongoing conversation on greatness at GRG the Pod, on YouTube, on Apple, on Spotify, and everywhere else you listen to podcasts. The video is obviously on YouTube, and everything else is on audio, man. It's dope, man. It's dope. I think you'll have a really great time and learn a lot. Take a couple of nuggets, pearls of wisdom, and put them in your back pocket. You never know.
Boom. All right. You're good at selling it too. That's I love it. So you have to be. You have to be. All right, Marty. Thanks again. This is great.
Never selling when you're passionate, but it's never sell.
There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, bud.